Okay. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen. Share. Okay. You guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So thank you very much for joining us, guys. I am your host, Ariel Rahmanov with Keller Williams Realty Liberty. I am a real estate agent. Joining me today, we have Aaron Katzman from Katzman Law offices of Aaron Katzman, and we have our very special loan officer, Keshav Singh from the Federal Savings Bank. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic.
I am Aaron Katzman. I'm an attorney. Been practicing law in New York for about approximately 20 years, representing numerous buyers, sellers, lenders, you name it. I focus on real estate law. And if you are looking to buy or sell a home, I'm hoping I could assist you in the process.
Thank you.
My name is Keshav Singh. I'm a banker at the Federal Savings Bank. I have been a banker for a little over 10 years now. My primary focus is on first-time home buyers and some of the special incentives that we're able to pass on to first-time home buyers. And I look forward to hopefully be of service to you guys.
Thank you very much. All right, guys. So I just want to encourage questions throughout the presentation, and feel free to ask questions at the end as well. Okay. So today we're going to cover these topics: selecting your realtor, your decision making on purchasing a home, how to get pre-approved for a loan. We're going to go through the process of searching for your home, making an offer, and from contract to closing. Okay, perfect. So why should you buy a home? What's the point? What are the reasons to purchase a home? Okay. So one, it's an investment. Paying for your home is most of the times can be cheaper than renting, because we know that real estate always appreciates in value, especially in New York City. It has value. It's actually sitting on cash, because when you do pay off your mortgage in 15 to 30 years from now, when you pay off your loan, you're sitting on tangible cash. It could be, hopefully by then it'll be worth more than what you pay for today. And especially now when we have Keshav Singh will dive into this more later on. Now we're living in an era where the interest rates are at a historic low. Okay, so why do we want to buy a home? Because we know it's a proven investment, and as you can see over here on these two graphs, the graph on the left it shows you the value increase in real estate in the 5 boroughs, and on the right it shows you the value increase in real estate appreciation in Suffolk and in Long Island. Okay, and on top of that, you want to buy a home because you want to be able to build these beautiful memories with your family. You want to have your home is the foundation for beautiful memories with your family. It's where you can experience your baby walking for the first time. Have many birthday parties there with your family, and special guests and meals with friends and family, etc. Okay. Now, Keshav Singh, this is more of your area. You want to give us a few incentives on home buying from the loan end?
Sure. So just to kind of piggyback on what Ariel touched on, over the years, the government has really made it a lot easier for consumers to get access to funds to purchase a home. One of my missions as a banker is really just to kind of simplify the process. There are several loan programs available out there. Some, you guys may have heard some certain terminologies, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. But really at its core, The type of loan program that you end up getting is really going to be tailor-made for you, right? So for instance, some people may have credit challenges, and that's where we may be able to utilize a program like FHA, which allows us to go, significantly lower on the FICO score model. Some banks are still doing, loans as low as 500, 550. FHA itself does not have a minimum credit score, but the lenders themselves who are actually, lending the money to finance the homes, they're the ones who set those overlays in terms of what they require, right? Right now, after COVID-19, we've seen, across the industry, most lenders are requiring at least a 600, 620, I would say, for an FHA. State funding, there is a program through New York State called Sony May, and that is tied to a down payment assistance grant that the state actually has available for first-time home buyers. You can get up to $15,000, to put towards your down payment or your closing costs. So when someone comes to us to look at at their options, those are probably some of the things that we explore. It's not the easiest program to qualify for. A lot of these programs, especially when it comes to getting money from a grant, let's say, they do have a lot of requirements. So for example, they may have their own credit score requirements. They may have their own, debt to income ratio requirements. There's also geographical restrictions as far as, how much you're able to borrow depending on your county. So we'll be able to explore all of those options. And look, at the end of the day, if you don't fit into that box, let's say, that Sony May has created, then we can kind of switch gears and look into something else. In terms of the process itself, and I don't know if we reached that juncture as yet, Ariel. Forgive me, but our primary goal is really just to make sure that as a buyer, particularly if you are a first-time buyer, to make sure that you're armed with all of the knowledge and all of the information, so you can make the best decisions for you, when it comes to choosing a mortgage program. And that's kind of why it's important to choose good professionals to work with.
Well said, Keshav. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. So now let's go through let's try to understand the home buying process. Okay. So the first meeting and a buyer consultation with the real estate agent. Number one is just hire an agent. And once you hire an agent, we will teach you how to get to know their neighborhood, how to analyze current inventory and what is coming soon to the market. And we're going to also help you understand market value and what that means, and what it means to be in a seller's market, in a buyer's market, and in a flat market. Okay. And furthermore, and I personally, as an agent, I truly do believe that this next step, going through your wants and needs assessment, is probably the most important part of the agent-client relationship, because I need to know your budget. I need to know your location. I need to know the type of home you're interested in. And I also need to know what you are not interested in, because if I know these information, I'll be able to filter out many different homes on the market and make it customizable to you, right? Okay. Now, what does it mean to hire an agent as your client, to hire me as your client? It means that we prioritize you as your client. We understand your goals. We understand your wants and needs. We are your neighborhood real estate agent, your neighborhood expert. And furthermore, you gotta think about it. You're the buyer. You have all this money. Now, wouldn't it make sense to have someone representing you on all that money? You have $600,000 that you're about to spend. You're about to make one of the biggest transactions of your life. Wouldn't it be helpful to have a negotiator who's trained in dealing with listing agents, seller agents, and negotiating against them? Because they're not the ones with the money. They're just the ones with the house that you're paying for, right? And at the end of the day, the difference between you being my customer and you being my client is my fiduciary obligations to you. Everything here is in confidence, in confidentiality. Okay. Now, Keshav, now we're back to you. Now, what does it mean to get pre-approved for a loan? Can you walk us through the process?
Sure. So, there's a lot of different things that go into getting pre-approved, but fundamentally it comes. And now, just going back to some of the loan programs, regardless of the loan program that we end up using for you, or you end up taking advantage of, fundamentally getting approved for a mortgage comes down to three basic things: verifying your income, making sure that your credit is as such where you're credit worthy, and we can kind of delve into that in a little bit, and also making sure that we verify your assets, right? Just to make sure, hey, if you go to your realtor and say, I'm planning on putting down 20%, he'll say, okay, you know what? Let me, speak to the banker, and it's my job as the banker now to make sure that we verify those funds. Now, you don't have to have it all sitting in your account at the same time when you come to me, right? As long as you say, hey, look, this is my 401k. I'm able to access a portion of this money. Or, maybe if you're lucky enough to have a rich uncle, hey, which actually I just took an application where someone has a rich uncle and he's going to give them, $100,000 to buy the home. But, we kind of have to have some sort of direction in terms of where the money is coming from, because once we generate that pre-approval, we send it out there and we send you back to that realtor so they can start looking for a home. Other agents now, listing agents, once they see that pre-approval, they're going to start calling me and say, hey, Keshav, have you done your job, right? Have you checked their credit to make sure that they're not in any credit issues? Have you verified their income with their employers to make sure that what they showed you on that pay stub or in that W-2 is going to continue, after we close? So the pre-approval, going through a bona fide pre-approval process takes the guesswork whether or not you're going to get the mortgage, right? So once we check all of these boxes, it's the hardest part is really just to find the house, but the banker's job is to make sure that we go through these steps, right? Checking your credit, verifying your income, making sure that we have that discussion as far as where the money's coming from. There is a couple of different guidelines that we have to follow in terms of sourcing where this money is coming from. And that's something that, I don't think we should go into that right now, but really just, we just have to show the paper trail, right? We have to show where the money's coming from, because the government has, the banks have that burden to show in terms of the funds that are used to finalize a real estate transaction. But leaving all of that aside, right? My job as your banker is really just to make sure that regardless of what you qualify for, that you're comfortable with that monthly payment, right? So, you may be able to qualify for a $5,000 monthly payment on paper because banks are able to use your gross salary, and that's really different because obviously what you have as disposable income is not your gross earnings, right? There are deductions, besides tax deductions, there, you may have other responsibilities to pay for. You may have a car note, you may have child support, you may have, student loans, you may have other responsibilities. So again, so that's where we would have that discussion, right? Making sure that we're conscious of your debt to income ratio, making sure that you understand that, hey, look, yes, on paper, my banker says I can look at a $500,000 house, but this is what the payment's going to be. And I also have to take that into consideration when I look at how it's stacked up with the other monthly obligations that I have. So, choosing a realtor is important, but definitely, choosing a knowledgeable banker and a banker who is accessible is equally as important because, these are the discussions that we're going to have, right? Sometimes it's, some people do get disappointed because my job is to share the good news and sometimes the not so pleasant news, right? We're human. We see houses that we fall in love with. And, just yesterday, I had to tell someone that they don't qualify for a home, and it's tough. But again, I've also spoken with folks over the last week or two who told me that they were pre-approved by another banker from another institution And when I started going, delve into it a little bit deeper, it turns out that that banker never even pulled their credit. So now they're out there shopping for a $900,000 house in Queens with the pre-approval from, I might add, a reputable lender, local reputable lender, but that banker failed to do his job correctly. So the realtor reached out to me and she was like, look, I saw a pre-approval from these people. Would you mind just, taking a second look at it? Turns out they cannot qualify for this home, and the borrowers, they understood, but it's disappointing nevertheless, So again, just making sure that we're thorough in the beginning when we ask for all of your documents, your pay stubs, your W-2s, and so forth. It's because we need to make sure that these things don't happen. And for you, your experience is going to be 1,000 times better, once we're prepared in the beginning.
Thank you. And you mind if I ask you just a couple of questions?
Sure.
So, in your experience, especially within the past couple of months due to COVID, have you noticed a lack in getting pre-approved? I mean, is one still able to get pre-approved during COVID?
So, yes and no. Obviously, we are kind of living in unprecedented times where, banks, on a daily basis, and I know you and I, we speak about this a lot. Banks are still trying to figure things out, right? Now we're trying to figure out how to treat people who took advantage of those 3 months deferment. That when the government, when the governor said, hey, we can stop mortgage payments. Well, it's nice that he said that, but the banks are the ones who have to now say, well, we have to figure out a mechanism to implement that. So one of the areas where it's been difficult is really, making the distinction between the essential and non-essential workers, right? Because there is a large segment of our population who, let's say 2-3 months ago, were able to qualify for a mortgage, and now we're kind of in limbo because their businesses were forced to shut down, right? And so we're just kind of in a holding pattern. I had closings that got adjourned literally the day after the lockdown went into effect. Barbershop owners, doormen, so a lot of taxi drivers. I mean, there are people who were not able to work, people in the service industry. And so, so it's been a mixed bag. People who are still working, it's just been business as usual. David mentioned earlier that he was a teacher. Part of the group that we service at my bank at the Federal Savings Bank is the UFT and NYSET, which are the teacher unions in the city. And, just getting the verifications of employment back from the DOE has been a challenge, right? Because they're basically working on a skeletal crew. So now we have to have the teachers go directly onto their payroll portal, and they were able to generate those documents themselves. But before, we were able to get it done from the DOE. So it has changed the way we are able to do things a little bit, but we're still able to get things done.
Right, that makes sense. I appreciate that, Kishab. Okay. So now let's go into searching for a home real quick. So where do buyers start their search? So there's a pie chart. Most buyers start their search online with the realtors, and sometimes they even find it with the yard sign, friend and relative. And now, how does an agent help you find the right home for you? Okay. Well, luckily we have a database. We have our sphere of influence. We would door knock, and especially we have agents in our office. In my office alone, in my KW franchise, we have around 150 agents, and those 150 agents have listings. So every listing we get, we have a board. We put it up on the board, and we go and we share listings. We want to be able to share listings with our potential coworkers, because we know that's where the business happens. Business happens with agents sharing their listing, which brings me into our multiple listing services. Okay, multiple listing services is an MLS where every single agent in New York City, and we just merged, by the way, so we have more homes available, put their homes on that database, and we're able to have access to 40,000 agents' listings. Right. So now the question is, now how do we dive deeper into the home that you're looking for? So one of the questions you could be asking yourself is, what are the 5 most important qualities you need in a home that would make you want to purchase it? Right? So with that being said, you're naturally going to come to comparing a home and a neighborhood. You know, does this neighborhood have good schools? What are the taxes in that neighborhood? Does it have nice parks? Is it close to the train system? Then you finally decide on your dream home. You decide to purchase that home. You put in an offer. Okay. So now we're going to navigate through the home buying process. All right. So you're going to submit your offer. We're going to go through the negotiation process. Your offer may or may not get accepted. It'll be rejected, and then you have to have a counter offer signed back. In fact, I'm going through that now. I have a listing in Valley Stream. We just got a $350,000 cash offer. We countered with we had a counter offer. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's still in progress, but we countered offer and went up, you know, and by the end of the week, hopefully we'll get an accepted offer. Okay. And we may even get another offer on it. And right now, going back to what Scott was saying, if you're pre-approved, your pre-approval letter with that offer will be so much stronger to another offer that is not pre-approved, because it's almost like the money is there. Okay.
That's right.
Congratulations. You have an accepted offer now. Now we're going to go through the inspections. We just very quickly, you know, there are multiple inspections that you may want to go through to make sure the house is what you expected it to be. Maybe next time in the next video we'll have an inspection on board and he'll go more into detail. But now I'm going to invite Katzman onto the floor, and he's going to go through the process from contract to closing. Katzman, how you doing?
I think that's your cue, Aaron.
That is me. Thank you. A pleasure. The process from the attorney's perspective is pretty straightforward. Once you find a house, the most important step, frankly, is to let the realtor know who your broker is, and they will provide that information to the seller. And at that point, the seller's attorney will forward a contract that the seller prepares to the buyer's attorney, and it'll be reviewed by the buyer's attorney. Whatever changes or specific points that you as a buyer would bring up, that maybe when you walk through the house, you notice certain things needed to be repaired, certain things were brought up in your inspection report, or there were certain things that between you and the seller you guys agreed on. You want to make sure that the down payment is what you agreed to, the closing date is at the time that you are agreeing to, and there'd be a list of questions we'd go through when we sit down to sign the contract to make sure everything is properly addressed in the contract. And these days during COVID, one of the main changes that you'll find is instead of sitting with your attorney face to face, a lot of this will be done via telephone, and the signatures on the contract will be done through an electronic method, for instance, DocuSign or one of those services. Once both the contracts are signed by the seller and you as the buyer, you will also provide the down payment. Typically, that's somewhere between 5 to 10% of the purchase price, depending on the price of the home. Once that's done, we as your attorney will order title, which is a review of the public record to see who actually owns the property, what liens may be against the property. Assuming there's a mortgage from the current owner, that's going to show up. There may be other kinds of liens against the property. For example, if a homeowner hasn't paid their taxes, the federal government, as well as the state and local government, will put a lien against your home. Stuff like that. And we want to make sure when you are ready to go to the actual closing, that everything is clear from title, and you are, as the new owner, the only lien against the property will be your new mortgage. And during the process from signing the contract to closing, typically you will have I'm speaking typically, 45 days to obtain your mortgage approval from your lender. And then approximately 2 to 4 weeks after, the actual closing will take place. Now, all of this stuff is obviously subject to some change, but those are the typical, that's the typical timeline that you'll be looking at. And these days, when it comes, because due to COVID, a lot of times the closings are also being done somewhat, not necessarily virtually, but used to be at a typical closing, the buyers would come, the sellers would come, their attorneys would be there, the broker would be there, sometimes the lender would be there, as well as a representative from the title company. So you could easily have 10 plus people sitting in the conference room. These days, a lot of times the documents will be, the seller documents will be pre-signed, and the only people at the closing will be you, the buyer, your attorney, and someone from the title company. So it's a much smaller group at the closing due to the current virus going around.
Thank you. That was very informative. I appreciate that, Kasim. Okay. So now with all that being said, so now the home gets appraised. The lender, Keshav, will send an appraiser to value the home, right, Keshav? Is that how it works?
Fully executed contract back from your attorney. That's basically our cue to start the process, right? You never want to start the process prematurely, because a lot could happen, between the time where you sign your contract or even from when you have an accepted offer. I've seen situations where people were, they went to their attorney's office and they signed a contract and they left their check with their attorney, and on their way to my office to sign their application, the realtor called and said, "Hey, by the way, we just got an all-cash offer, so we're going to go in that direction." So it's important, and just in terms of best practices on our end. Once we have an accepted offer and we go through the inspection and the contract signing, once your attorney gets the contract back, that's our cue to basically start the application. Now, because we already did so much work in the beginning, getting you pre-approved, right? I would say 90% of what we would need, we've already have, right? So your bank statements, your pay stubs, your W-2s, your IDs, Social Security card, asset statements, whether it's coming from 401k, retirement accounts, stocks, whatever, what have you. All of those things we've already collected from you. Typically the only thing that we would need as the process progresses, we would need obviously updated pay stubs as you go from month to month, and then and the bank statements where you have your down payment, to show where your down payment comes out of. But part of our application is that we also collect a fee to order the appraisal, and the bank is going to order an appraisal from an independent third party. This is because we have the burden to obtain an unbiased report of the property's value. So banks use an intermediary company called the AMC, which is the acronym stands for an appraisal management company. And what they do, they collect the appraisal fee, they collect the copy of the sales contract, and then they place the order with an appraisal company that's local. And then the appraisal company, whoever is going to be responsible for scheduling, most of the time it's the realtor, and the realtor will make contact with the homeowner, and then the homeowner will give them, will coordinate a time for them to complete their inspection of the home. Now, because we're living in, in a COVID, era, things have also changed significantly with the way homes are being appraised. We've had just homes that were done, just as a visual inspection without someone going inside. There is fear, homeowners are fearful of letting strangers into their homes. And likewise, appraisers are also fearful of letting strangers into their home. So what's the compromise? So the government has kind of issued some guidance as far as what we're allowed to accept. And most of what we've been doing recently in terms of our appraisals, we were able to do just an exterior appraisers, and most of the government agencies, the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, which facilitates the FHA program, they have accepted those. In fact, I have a loan that's closing next week that it's an FHA loan, and the appraiser never stepped foot into the house. He just went across the street, he took a photo, he did his market analysis, to ascertain the value, and they take into certain assumptions that the house is an average functional condition, and so we're able to close this loan. So COVID-19 has definitely impacted a few different facets of the business, and an appraisal is definitely one of those that got impacted as well. And we've also been able, besides just doing the limited appraisals and the exterior ones, we've also been able to get just a lot of appraisal waivers. And they're called property waivers. Whereas, let's say your home, your mortgage is owned by Fannie Mae, and you're going through a refinance, we may be able just to bypass the appraisal altogether and just use whatever the current market value is. So COVID has actually given a way for us to be able to do some of those things as well.
Perfect. That's very reassuring for our buyers listening out there. Great. So now that we just appraised the value of the home, so now we're going to go into closing on your home. And I know Aaron touched upon this briefly. You want to have a title search. Aaron, can you explain more about the reasons why you want to have a title search?
Sure. The main reason for doing a title search is to ensure that when you buy the home, two things. First, the person selling the home has the legal right to sell it to you. So when you buy it, you actually do own it. Second is you do not want to buy the home subject to any of the current owner's liens, meaning you don't want to buy the home with the current owner's mortgage still outstanding on the property. If you do, that becomes your headache, not his anymore. So the title search allows us to make sure everything is clear and the transfer goes smoothly.
Perfect. So essentially, it protects the buyer from making a transaction that would basically, essentially, for lack of a better term, screw them.
For lack of a better term, yes. Well said.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we go into the final inspection. That basically just means that we just make sure everything adheres to the contract, and there's nothing else wrong with the home. Right. Now we close. Now we're at the closing table. Now we're all in the same room. Well, at least not now. Now it's all done virtually. Aaron, in your experience, during the past couple months, how would we now close a home and get everything notarized? And how can I own my home right now during COVID?
Well, at the closing, keep in mind, the seller is going to pre-sign everything they need to sign. And those will be given to the title company prior to the actual day of the closing. So when you, as the buyer, sign all the documents, even with the COVID situation, you're going to have to sign in person in order to have documents that need to be notarized. New York is not a state where you can notarize by there is an exception, but it's not widely used, and it's effectively sitting with a notary one way or another. So the documents will be notarized. That's not an issue during these times. At that point, you'll also be providing whatever money, whatever checks need to be given to actually pay for the home, and you will receive the keys on the spot to the home. And at that point, it is yours.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Congratulations. You own a home. Fantastic. So just to recap, we have discussed today on how to select your realtor, on your decision-making on purchasing a home, how to get pre-approved, and going through the process of searching a home to decide to purchase, and finally the closing. Okay, so with that being said, here are our contact information. Feel free to give us a call. Feel free to give Keshav a call or law offices of Aaron Katzman, and we'll be more than happy to help you guys out with anything you need. Now, I want to open it up to the floor. I know we have a few attendees. Do you have any questions for us?
I think we have a question in the chat box, Ariel.
Okay. Question directed to Ariel, anonymous attendee. Okay. What if you have two different realtors suggest very different market values for your house? How do you choose which realtor you should go into contract with? Okay. So if I understand this question properly, essentially two different realtors have two different opinions of a value of a home, right? So now the question is, how do you choose which realtor you should go into contract with? That is actually a very good question. I like that question. I like that question because it happens. I mean, the listing agent might have a specific value in mind, and the buyer agent might have another value in mind. However, at the end of the day, and we did touch upon this earlier with appraising a home, okay? So the question is, at the end of the day, who decides what a home is worth? What? And to really answer that question, the answer is simply the bank. The bank uses comparable values, comparable homes that they value up against the home that the subject property, and they compare apples to apples. Now that they compare apples to apples, and you have prior data reflecting on that home, they're going to use that information to come up with an estimate and a value of the home. For me, I would never value a home with $100,000 or $200,000 more than what it's worth, or on the other end, $100,000 to $200,000 less, because who am I to go against data? We work with data, and if the data says X, I cannot say Y. It's basic mathematics, and if you do have an agent that's telling you X and you have another agent telling you Y, you should ask them, can you please show me your comparables? Show me how did you get to this answer? I don't know who asked that question. It's anonymous, but I really do hope I answered your question. And Keshav, if you have another thought on that from the lender's perspective, feel free to answer.
Yeah. So when we order the appraisal, so let's say it's a purchase, right? We order the appraisal. We do give them the sales contract, right? So they see that, number one, it's a bona fide sale, and number two, it does have an expected value. So they already know, hey, look, this house in Nassau that went into contract for $500,000. That's what they expected to come in at. So they actually do understand that all parties are expecting a certain particular value. Normally, we don't really see a lot of dissension in terms of a value when it comes to purchases. We have seen a lot lower values come in, much more on a frequent basis now for refinances. A lot more conservative values. I don't know if if that's a byproduct of the times that we're living in, but certainly we've seen some values come in a little bit on the conservative side. But fundamentally, yeah, I mean, look, if that listing agent did their job correctly, right, and you have no reason to believe that they didn't, and they took the time to really educate the sellers about, what just recently sold in their area, they may make adjustments to the home's value based on recently renovated products and so forth. Then we expect them to list it at a fair price. Obviously they know that they may inflate it, a few, 2, 3, 4, maybe, not even 5%, but there is a tolerance that we can go up to when it comes to, expectations as far as value. But if we get, so let's say you go into to contract for a $500,000 property, and then the bank sends their appraiser out there and he comes in at, 485, right? As a buyer, although you have a fully executed contract at 500,000, you actually do have the ability to go back to them and say, look, this is what the appraisal came in at. We may need to go back and revisit these numbers. And again, it's just about negotiating. But again, we don't really see a lot of pushback when it comes to that.
Perfect. Thank you. And I do have another question here, and the question is from David Schwartz. So I need an agent, an attorney, and a broker. Are these always 3 separate parties that need to be acquired separately? Also, I am looking to purchase a home in New Jersey. Is the process the same as you're describing in New York? Also, is an appraisal and an inspection the same process? Does it include analyzing mold/asbestos? Okay, so let's take the first question. So he needs an agent, an attorney, and a broker. Are these always 3 separate parties? Okay, so an agent and a broker, essentially, practically they're the same. But technically, a broker, they have agents working with them. They have agents working essentially a part of the broker's company. But the broker and the agent can do the same job, okay? Now an attorney, I don't know, is New Jersey an attorney state? Aaron is I don't know if you know, is a New Jersey an attorney state? Or Kashab, if you know.
New Jersey functions pretty much like New York in most ways that you'll see.
Okay. Now, Aaron, are you also licensed in New Jersey? Are you able to help them out in New Jersey?
No, licensed just in New York.
Okay. Okay. Kashab, now are you able to help them in New Jersey?
Yeah. I mean, we are a federally chartered bank, so I am actually licensed to close loans anywhere in the country, which is terrific. We do a significant amount of business in New Jersey as well, and so David, please feel free to reach out to me, man. I'd be happy to help.
Perfect. I will send them over your contact information afterwards. And as for an agent, for luckily because I'm a part of Keller Williams, which I really do, I am very fortunate enough to be a part of. I really do love my company, and one of the things I love about my company is that we have offices in every single state. We even have offices in in Israel. We have offices outside of the country as well. So because of that, I can do my research on the agent that you want to work with, or you want to work with a specific personality, or if you want to work with a more experienced agent, or whatever your criteria is in an agent in New Jersey. We have a system where I can go through every agent and match you up with the best agent in the area that you're looking for. Okay. Now, an appraisal and an inspection, is it the same process? No. The appraisal they value the home. The inspection, they just make sure that everything is okay with the home. You know, if like there is if there's mold in the home, they're gonna make sure to let the buyer know, in case you have to fix that. And even asbestos, an asbestos is very important, because if an asbestos is leaking, then they're gonna have to deal with that. Even termites. An appraisal and an inspection are two different industries within the real estate industry. Okay. Now, also, if my wife and I have been searching for homes through Zillow, is there anything to be careful about? Good question. I really like that question, because you do have a lot of listings on Zillow that have been up for a while, and sometimes those homes may not be available on the market. So that's one thing to consider. I don't know. I mean, is there anything else I need to worry about on Zillow? Oh yeah, if you see a home on Zillow, sometimes Zillow will tell you that the house is worth X amount of money, but it's not 100% accurate. They don't have a very good system to completely appraise the home for what it's actually worth. You need that human element to appraise the home, and Zillow doesn't have that. Okay. And okay, is there, okay, fine. Listings say contact agent. Does that mean I don't need my own if I'm following a listing from a given website? Listings say contact agent. Does that mean I don't need my own if I'm following a listing from a given website? I'm not really sure. What the question means. If I unmute you, would you be able to explain your question, David?
Sure. Meaning the three people I need, a broker, an agent, and an attorney, if a listing has an agent who's already dealing the property, does that mean I still need to seek out my own realtor?
I believe he's talking about the listing agent, Ariel.
Oh, listing agent. Okay. You mean if the listing agent has the home, do you want to go through the buyer? That's your question, right? Yeah. Okay.
Is a listing agent different than a realtor?
A listing agent is a realtor, but the distinction is, at least in New York City, and I'm pretty sure New Jersey has the same process. I'm not entirely sure, but in New York City, you have a listing agent, which represents the seller of the home, and then you have a buyer's agent, which represents the purchaser of the home. Now, the listing agent, he has an obligation to his seller, meaning he's going to negotiate for the seller. He has confidentiality. He has to be confident to his seller. He has his fiduciary obligations to the seller. Essentially, he's supposed to, by law, go against you. You know what I mean? He's supposed to negotiate against you and not for you. That's why I really do encourage having a buyer's agent representing you, because you're the one with the money. You want an agent representing you because you want someone on your side to negotiate for you. You want someone to have those fiduciary obligations for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to ask?
Yeah. Back to the point about the appraisal and the inspection being separate. Meaning the appraisal just says the value of the house. The inspection analyzes if there's any issues. But if a property needs essential work, meaning it's not just cosmetic work on the house. It's like, for health safety purposes. Doesn't that directly affect its value? How can it be appraised if it has asbestos?
Yes. It does affect the value. If there is a significant damage on the house, like for instance, if there's a hole in the roof and it's the seller's responsibility to fix it, that will definitely undermine the market value of the home. And at that point, that just comes down to negotiating. you know, you know, you'll tell the seller, hey, look, your home has a hole in the roof. So either you drop down the price by 50 grand, or I'm not taking the home. It's your choice. Or you can fix the roof and I'll pay for whatever it's worth.
Okay, but that's like a very obvious thing. Like you mentioned during COVID, the appraisers might do most of their work from outside the home. If it's something that's not obviously visible, how do you know?
You're going to, this is Aaron. Once you have your inspection in, then we're going to review it. And if there are any issues of any significant, that add up to any significant amounts of money, then we're going to have to include that in the contract negotiation. Meaning you're not going to pay the full price if there's $25,000 worth of mold remediation.
Mm-hmm.
The seller may agree to reduce the price. They may not. It's just going to be part of the negotiation.
Mm-hmm. I see.
But none of that comes up in an appraisal. An appraisal is just what an appraiser thinks the property is worth. It is not going into if the property has foundation problems or any of that. That's through the actual inspection. So you're not going, the only way you'd sign a contract without the inspection is if you had 5 or 7 days after signing the contract to complete a satisfactory inspection, which gives you the opportunity to negotiate with the seller if you don't like what you find.
Uh-huh. Okay, and I know that every property is different and there's all sorts of different issues, and it's hard to give a across the board ruling, but generally speaking, being how it's 2020, like let's say I'm looking at a house that was built somewhere in the mid 1950s. What is generally considered to be a quote unquote modern home? How old?
It's a good question.
And I realize that, upkeep and care and unforeseen issues affect it.
I'm not able to hear what you're saying. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I said I realize that there's issues that come up, and that the amount of care and upkeep that's put into a home affects it differently than if a family didn't take care of their home over time. But generally speaking, is a 70-year-old home considered an older house or a modern house? Like, what's the cutoff?
Guys, I think let me just try to see if I can answer his question. So, David, there are adjustments to the value to every single appraisal. Okay, and like I previously mentioned, when an appraiser gets that order, he'll get a sales contract, and he'll know more or less what all parties are expecting the value to come in, right? And so when he starts looking at that particular house, they do take into consideration the age of the roof, the year it was built, the functionability of all the appliances, and they make adjustments to that value, So I think that's kind of, that's going to give us a fair assessment in terms of what the true current value of the house, given all of its adjustments. For example, a newly renovated kitchen that was renovated maybe within the last 5 to 10 years, that will add value to the house. However, if it hasn't been renovated since the 60s, it will definitely decrease the value. So appraisers do administer adjustments to the price based on those factors of a house. So you will see that when most people don't take the time to go through a full appraisal report, because it's usually like 30, 40 pages. But those adjustments are going to be in there, and because he has to justify the value, right? Some houses may have brick, some houses may not have brick, right? So some houses may have a full driveway, some houses may have a shared driveway. So there are going to be contingencies in place for the appraisers to notate those different types of things when it comes to assessing a value.
I see. One last question.
Sure.
In terms of being pre-approved for a loan,
Right.
thankfully, my credit score is in the 700s. My wife's credit score is in the 700s. We do have some funds that we've been, put away for a down payment when the time comes.
Right.
Just like a particular thing that hopefully it seems over the years has not affected my credit, but for whatever reason, a number of years ago, I put a freeze on my credit line. And,
Okay.
I gave some sort of password. I forgot it. So I have to go through each individual credit union to unfreeze it. And two of them were easy. The last one is TransUnion. I've been kind of delaying it. I have to put together a whole portfolio of documents to verify my identity and everything to unlift the freeze. Obviously, I want to unfreeze my credit for various reasons. But let's say I'm delayed. If my credit score is strong, will a freeze on my credit affect my ability to be pre-approved for a loan?
Yes and no. I think, well, any lender, their position is going to be that they need to view all three credit bureaus, right? It's the only way to kind of make sure that your credit profile is properly assessed. And so, if we have access to only 2 out of the 3 credit bureaus, I can give you a pre-approval on good faith, right? Because you have a great job, which is stable, right? Because you're a union employee, correct? You have the money saved up for your down payment. Your other 2 credit scores may be above 700. So those things are good indication that your credit worthiness is not going to be jeopardized by that one particular bureau still being locked, right? But so from my professional experience, I would not have a problem giving you a pre-approval, providing that those things are intact. Okay. However, once you do find a home and you're ready to move forward with an application, we have to have that one. TransUnion. Some of them, it's are a little bit easier, as I'm sure you found out, but they all have to be unfrozen at that point.
David, you're on mute.
One last question back to the thing about Zillow is
Sure.
I'm using Zillow is because I'm looking for homes in a state that I do not live in.
Right.
So in terms of getting my own agent, like Ariel said, to advocate for my side of the deal, because the agent on the listing is advocating for their end of the deal. Once I acquire an agent, do I still need to go through Zillow, or will that agent go in whatever route that he's able to outside of the website?
Right. So the benefit of working with an agent is that they will do all the research for you. They will schedule many different homes for you to see. In fact, that's the most tedious part, because getting in touch with the listing agent can sometimes be very, very annoying. I've done that. I've scheduled homes, and it could be a real pain. But that's our job. They know the area. They will go through every single home that's available on the market, and they will call you and be like, "Hey, look, let's see some homes on Sunday." And they'll knock down the home that best suits your need. Now, when you go through Zillow, you can show them the home that you want to see on Zillow. And they can take it there as well.
Do I most likely want an agent who lives in that district or that state at least?
You want, what do you mean? Yeah, of course. I mean, you do want an agent who knows the area.
Right. So meaning I should look into or get recommendations from people in the local neighborhood if they can recommend a local realtor.
Yeah, that's one way to go about it. I mean, I could do that for you as well. I can.
Even though you're limited to living in New York, though.
Oh no, I would put you in touch with an agent who services that area in Cherry Hill where you want to move.
Ah. Okay.
In fact, I'm doing that for another individual. I'm doing that for an individual who wants to move to Pennsylvania. I set him up with a fantastic buyer agent down there. There's another agent. There's another client of mine who wants to move to New Jersey, not Cherry Hill, and I'm setting up with another top agent there. You know?
Okay.
So it's definitely possible. Yeah.
Okay, those are all my
I
questions.
guess, yeah. Sorry.
No, done.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate you guys bearing with us. I really do hope you guys learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Contact Katzman Law. He's a fantastic lawyer. His services, his prices are unbeatable. Keshav Singh as well. And it was nice to have you over. I really do appreciate it. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Stay healthy and safe.
Thanks, guys. Take care. David, I'll be getting in touch with you, all right?
Okay, great.
Take care.
Bye-bye.